Hi, everybody. It's Pat Love from EXP Realty. I'm here today with Carlos, and I'm going to try to not trip over his name, Taylhardat of Art of Head. Close? Okay. Well, you can say it after I finish. From Art of Headshots. I've known Carlos for a few years, and I'm looking forward to diving deeper into his story. So, hi, Carlos. Say
Hi,
your last
Pat.
name.
Yeah, it's Taylhardat. And thank you
Okay.
for having me. I'm looking forward to our interview. Thank you.
Yes, me too. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you're super, super busy. So, could you share a bit more about Art of Headshots and the story of how you got there and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. You know, one of my favorite stories, which is my own experience in life, is failing forward. And I used to be a family therapist for the Ministry of Children and Family. And I earned my title through the experience that I had working in therapeutic group homes. And I worked indirectly with the Ministry of Children and Family for 15 years. And I started when I was 20 years old in a group home. Then eventually I was a manager. Then after managing a group home for kids who were sexually abused and were apprehended, I took a course here in Vancouver called Pacific Coast Family Therapy Training Association, which is not, it wasn't recognized as an institution because they taught family of origin theory, which is not what the university wanted at that time. They want foreign theory. And anyway, so 7 years of that non-accredited education allowed me to work with parents before they returned with kids. So I did this job for a long time. And then when my car court became premier, they cut down all the nonprofit agencies that weren't that were not part of the government, and I was out of a job, and I didn't have the qualifications to have my job back. To do what I was doing, I would need a PhD, and honestly, I didn't want to have that job back. And I loved digital technology. I loved photography. So I thought that maybe we can integrate psychology and family therapy with photography, because that is a recipe for capturing the soul of people, and that's what we do, and that's the art of headshots. So it was a little bit of a journey beforehand. You know, there's a few more walls and a few more losing, but as a matter of fact, I think I helped a lot more people being a photographer than being a family therapist.
Well, that's good to know. You wouldn't think that.
No, but you know what? A great portrait of you. We did this show one year in 2010, I think it was 2011. And it was to help soldiers dealing with PTSD. And we did an art show called the Veterans Portrait Project for 3 armories in Vancouver. And we displayed their images in huge 16 by 20s. And some of their wives said, "That's you. You're being honored." You know, and that just gave the soldiers a great belonging, and it honored them. Sure, it doesn't cure PTSD, but to be acknowledged and heard and viewed goes a long way. And we do that with every client. You know, if they need to look for a job, or they're going for LinkedIn, a law firm who wants to show off how wonderful their staff is, a great portrait just says something deep and profound. You know the saying that a picture speaks 1,000 words?
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with it. A picture doesn't speak in words. A picture speaks to your psychic. And when you look at a portrait of people, you know whether you're safe with them, who they are, what their story is, if they're well photographed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a badly photographed picture becomes what we call the vacant smile. But that's what we do, you know. And I think that that you were, when you had your headshot done,
Mm-hmm.
live forever through a great portrait.
Well, that's very cool. So let me see. I see that there are several locations of Art of Headshots now. Are you the founder?
Yes, I'm the founder, and I went to Capilano University to do my business plan, and which is that was my connection with North Vancouver, and it was about 2009. Now, what I did not know when I started Art of Headshots, which I knew that headshots was an area that would explode because actors were using their portraits for auditions, but realtors started using portraits to and their business cards and so forth, and they realized that somehow, for some reason, a portrait was giving them more business, and they started calling them headshots, which is just a slang word. Headshots just means a modern portrait. So I predicted that eventually every career would be using portraits. But
Mm-hmm.
so happened that along the way, a new phenomenon also occurred, which is what we call social media. And every social media starts with a professional portrait. And I don't care how good of a selfie you do, you never look professional unless you're photographed by a professional. It makes a big
Mm-hmm.
difference.
Definitely, definitely. So, who inspired you as a child? Anyone?
Well, yes, my father. My father was a great photographer, and we used to photograph together. I used to help him also with film photography, with film movies. So we would put it together, and he loved photographing. My dad was a diplomat, so we traveled around the world, and my dad loved photographing people and so forth. But also another piece that inspired me, it was in his living room. He had a big book of portrait images, what we call headshots now,
Mm-hmm.
and there was Marilyn Monroe and all stuff. And I thought, that's so amazing. I can almost understand who JFK is, who Marilyn Monroe is, by looking at their pictures. There's just something about those portraits, and I always fantasize. Wouldn't it be amazing if I can get behind the camera and capture the essence of people? Wow, that would be amazing. So anyway, so I used to watch that book all the time, and when I was a little boy, and it was always in my dad's living room, and I always wished that I could do what they did in that book,
Mm-hmm.
which it was a book by a great portrait photographer. His name is Yusuf Karsh, and Yusuf Karsh moved to Ottawa in 1930 something, and up until the time that he died, which was 2002, people would fly from all over the world to Ottawa to get their portraits taken. You know, Gandhi, JFK, anybody came in to see him because he was that recognized.
Wow. Well, there's a little bit of history, we'll say, that I didn't know. So thanks for sharing that. That's very cool. So, can you tell us something that people don't know about you or your business? Some little known fact.
Some little known fact that nobody knows about me and my business. Interesting.
Or you yourself.
Okay. Um, I'll tell you a little thing. When I was 25 years old, I wanted to prove that I was smart because I thought I was smart, but I didn't have the academic background to show that I was smart. And that was something that I was very subconscious about. Fortunately, now it's irrelevant. But so I wanted to do something that nobody that I knew had done. So we drove across uh, North America, Central America, South America, from Vancouver to Venezuela.
Oh, wow.
And it was an accolade that I wanted to do, but mainly because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something different
Mm-hmm.
and exciting. And I wanted to see how the planet changes from one place, because when you arrive somewhere on an airplane, you're just there. But when you're going
Mm-hmm.
on land, you see that land changing from
Mm-hmm.
forests to deserts to the people. It was just amazing.
Yeah, more of a transition. Nice to see transition. Speaking of transitions, the pandemic. We've all transitioned a bit with the pandemic, and I know I saw a little news story, so I was very impressed with what you did to adapt to the pandemic or give back or help. And I know that you're a humble guy and that sort of thing, but could you share a little, just a little bit of that story that you did on the CBC the other day?
Yeah, so I was on CBC News because about a year or more ago. So um, we were growing. So we had, at that time, we had our 8 locations. And to do that, because, my idea wasn't bank worthy, I had a lot of high interest loans. I had a lot of loans going on, and I couldn't be, and we're just growing, people love our work. We were doing well in all the different cities, but our loans were too high. I needed to have over $1,200 revenue per day to just survive. And then when our corporation started canceling and so forth, early in February, I remember telling my wife, apologizing to her because our dream of building an international brand called Art of Headshots, from the information that I had at that time, was over. So um, it was a hard thing, but I realized that other people would be experiencing the same thing, except that I experienced it a little bit sooner because I couldn't be longer than 1 week without revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So after a shutdown, I thought, okay, what's going to happen this fall with the pandemic? So I thought, governments always take a long time. Why don't we build a website where we can match people who've lost their jobs or lost their business and don't have any funds, and the fridge is empty. Um, why don't we match people who need help in their neighborhood with someone in their neighborhood that wants to help them? So initially we called it Coronavirus SOS, but then eventually I had a partner, and he joined in the venture and he coded it. So we built a website which is still existing to this day, and it's operating and doing it. It's called helperos.com, Helper Operating System, or we nickname it helperos.com.
Mm-hmm.
And helperos.com, it matches someone who wants to help with help needed, and there's no financial denomination. It just goes all around,
Mm-hmm.
and it was wonderful. So CBC News interviewed me a year ago when we started, and
Mm-hmm.
interviewed me last week again with our story.
Yeah, well, I think that's wonderful, and that's what I talk about. I've talked about my last batch of interviews is, we're all fed up and sick and tired of the pandemic, but the pandemic gave us something. It gave us a gift of realizing that we still have hearts in there somewhere. And I think life just moved so quick that we didn't have time to go, hey, wait a minute, that person needs a hand. I did some deliveries for some seniors when nobody could go out and that sort of thing. And it was just nice
Can I
to
tell you what I learned about the pandemic?
what?
Okay, so when I was in high school, I listened to a concentration camp survivor, and his story changed my life because I couldn't fathom how this beautiful, wonderful man in front of me had experienced what he had experienced.
Mhm.
And near the end of the conversation, actually, before he said near the end of the conversation, he said something. He said that one of the things that he learned about being in a concentration camp is that it brings out the best and the worst in people. And
Mhm.
then prior to the end of the conversation, he said, um, I'm not telling you this because I'm Jewish. I'm telling you this because this is a story of humanity. Who are you going to be the day that something happens? And something will happen. Something happens in every generation. How are you
Mhm.
going to be? How are you going to act at that time? And I remember that conversation. So when the pandemic became a reality, I thought, who am I going to be? Am I going to
Mhm.
be the ones that finger point and all this stuff? But one of the things that I realized, and that's just my interpretation, is that it wasn't what he said. It wasn't that it brings the best and the worst. it brings the core of who you are amplified. So if you're always fearful, you become more fearful, and then we have two extremes. I like to call one extreme COVIDnoid, and then the other extreme anti-maskers, and they're very loud voices. But there's the rest of us, the 90% of us who are just trying to help and be part of it. And then there's the angry people and the paranoid people and all the stuff. And then there's the people who are helpful. And in Vancouver, we saw so many wonderful, beautiful people who've gone out and did tons of things. Actors who just pulled out $20,000 out of their bank account. To Keanu Reeves, he did that. I just read a story that he heard that one of the set managers was going to lose her home, and he just pulled out and he just gave her the money for it. So many people have really helped out because that's the core of who they are. And I think, Pat, that you probably went out there and helped because, and I can see that you have that beautiful light in you, and you wanted to help out, and
Yeah. Well, part of that is, we were talking about you only had a week's worth of money in the business. Part of me promoting a lot of the local businesses right now is I did own a restaurant many, 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 many years ago before my son was born. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I said to my husband, I said, oh my God, aside from what was going to happen to us, I said, there's not a family-owned restaurant around that, to my knowledge, based on my experience, could last 2 weeks because they use, and a lot of people who aren't business owners don't know this, and they need to be informed, and Bonnie Henry included. I have no problem with her, but she has to understand business a bit better because basically you use this month's money to pay last month's bills. And if you can't pay last month's bills, you can't buy food to sell because the suppliers won't supply you anymore. So I'm very impressed with those businesses that have survived this. And my heart is broken for the ones that didn't, because I know I would have been one of them. It would have been all over for me. And it was good that the government did step up and help people. It did, make a difference.
We're so lucky. We are so lucky that the government stepped out and helped out. We're so lucky to be Canadian. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because, there's a misconception and misunderstanding. And I'll tell you something, okay? When I worked for the Ministry of Children and Family, we had people earned money helping. And to me, that doesn't count. That's just a job. So you're not a genuinely helper. But when I turned an entrepreneur, I have never seen kinder people who work for profit. And they removed themselves from the security of a job and made the sacrifice to try and build something. And most entrepreneurs, and when we talk about most entrepreneurs, I don't know what percentage is, I'm just putting out a number, but let's say 99% of entrepreneurs, there are people who make less than $200,000 a year who are just doing things. It's only the 1% that actually are the Bill Gates and whatever. And I have no idea what it's like to be a billionaire. I'll never know because that's not what I'm interested in. But most of that 99%, there are people who just want to do great things. So do not stop from going to a restaurant and helping someone because they're for profit. For profit is just the exchange, but really, a restaurant owner and for me, with what you're saying, like when I walk by the streets and I see those empty stores and everything, it churns in my stomach. And I think, are there a kid in there who needed a parent to survive? What happens? It's so hard to be successful in business. It's very, very difficult. It requires a lot of work. It requires multi-disciplines and so if you get a chance, please get away from Amazon's and go and knock on a door and pay an extra $2 or $5 to buy something from a store. Go and have dinner, donate something. It'll make you feel better. You're going to get more out of it than they will. Let's help our community because You know, when we help our community, we help our community thrive, and everybody wins. You know, when we were buying from Amazon's, we were helping a system that manipulates that slave labor, or who knows what. I mean, I don't want to get too political about it, but yeah, thank you. You know, I think that entrepreneurship is the driving force of our culture, and I hope that coming out of this, we realize just how important it is. You know, I know that sometimes you can't afford and you got to buy stuff from the dollar store, great. But if you can afford, and you have to make a decision between, I'll give you another example. I don't use ketchup anymore, although they're saying they're, because ketchup shut down an Ontario plant. And then it was Frenchies decided to take over that plant and build a tomato. And I thought, you know, I want to help Ontarians. Sure, we're from BC, but I want to help Canadians anytime I get a chance. And why not eat Frenchies? And tasted a little bit different. Arguably, one is better than the other. But now my palate is used to Frenchies, and I don't like ketchup anymore. So there you go.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. Yeah, that definitely a thing. And that is what this is all about. What about the community website is all about shopping local and supporting our community. And it's even more important now. So I would like to say everybody needs a headshot. I'm planning to get mine, and he says he can spruce me up a bit so you can't see all my flaws.
Sorry, I'm not going to spruce you up. You look beautiful the way that you want. But we do have a photo retoucher who will, you know, play around with a couple things and all this stuff. You know, Pat, you don't need a lot of effort. You know, your energy is glowing. And whenever somebody sees you, they can tell that you're somebody who works with passion, compassion, intelligence. You are the model of North Vancouver, right? So
there we go.
I'm very excited to photograph you.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it too. So thank you very much, Carlos. And I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name again. I'll spend a week and then I'll say it again. I'll practice. So thank you. I know you're a busy guy, and I look forward to.
Before you end it, I'm going to break a COVID rule.
Okay.
Can I give you a virtual hug?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.